What's going on, you loyal listeners? Thank you for tuning in to the L Squared podcast. I'm your host here, Luke Larson, and joining me today, as per the unusual, my lovely and loquacious special guest who will be assisting me in leisurely launching you into levity, friend of the show, my good friend, I would say my best friend, Tyler Burdettedog Backus.
Well, quite the intro, like always. Appreciate being on.
The popcorn farmer himself.
Yep, here back again, straight from the field. Hopped on out just to do this podcast.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it because, as they say, popcorn never sleeps.
Exactly. Yep, it's a very stressful job, even in the winter. That you just have to go all the time and tend to those crops.
Yeah. So the reason I asked Tyler to join me today is this is a very special episode, loyal listeners. And I wanted to take this opportunity to make an announcement about something I've done. So as of today, I've lost 125 pounds in 7 months.
Nice. Yes, that's great.
And I just wanted to talk about it. I haven't publicly said that I was doing this really, and I just kind of wanted to just catalog my journey. And if people have questions, I can just point back to this. But I kind of wanted this as sort of a journal entry in a way, and a place to put all my thoughts, in this long road that I've been on. So the reason I wanted Tyler to come on the show, other than he's one of my favorite people, especially to have on here, is that, Tyler, you went through your own weight loss journey. It was about a year ago, right?
Yep. So I guess you could say 2019 was my journey,
Yeah.
where I then lost 130 pounds in my little weight loss journey there as well. So
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
So could you kind of sort of briefly touch on what that experience was like for you, and just kind of what your motivation was for it?
Yeah, definitely. So I had, I guess you could say attempted to, try to lose weight more in the past. Would start up a little diet and just couldn't always follow it through at times, and eventually got up to my peak weight, which was 355 pounds.
Mm.
And after hitting that, um, and well, it definitely was no secret. People noticed, and people would bring it up to you, and again, no secret. It was like, yeah, obviously. But it eventually hit me. Seeing another photo of myself, kind of like a 3-in-1, where it's just like, it's time to hop on something and stick to it this time. It's like it's gotten out of control, and it's just time to actually stick to it and punch through it. And I think it was just a combination of all those things that just finally triggered in my brain, okay, let's do it. Let's get it done. Let's lose that weight, and let's get to where we want to, back to where we want to be. So that's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
how it sparked with me. A good few things brought me into finally sticking to my diet.
And what was, I don't think you and I have ever really talked about this, but what exactly were you doing?
Just for like diet wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I first, and this is back when my parents actually lost some weight too.
Mm-hmm.
We first all kind of together went to Orthopedic Institute. They had like their weight loss program. I think they called it maybe Way to Go,
Mm.
or maybe that they all individually kind of was able to name their own thing.
Sure.
And but that's who we went through right off the bat. And so I did learn quite a lot about, what to eat, what not to eat, your portion control, all that through there. And but that is the first time that I broke out and kind of stopped doing that diet after losing X amount. I just, wanted to, I guess, call a snack or eat again. And so with that knowledge, the second time around, I just basically took that knowledge that I had learned the first time. I
Mhm.
didn't join another program or anything, but I, basically cut out a lot of the carbs, a lot of just foods that, are, not necessarily bad, but, if you're trying to lose weight, they're bad, so
Mhm.
I cut out a lot of that kind of stuff. And definitely punched through. Portion control was a big thing for me, and so just knowing that I don't need to eat this much, trim down, eat what I need to do, that kind of stuff. So I guess you could say it was based off of a certain diet, but I just
Mhm.
took that knowledge and kind of finally punched through myself.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and it's just incredible to me that you kind of did it on your own. Like you had gained that knowledge, but you weren't like on a specific program, you know.
Yeah,
That,
yeah, and as you probably know too, after being on your program, you probably learned quite a lot. And so I'd say, if it was without that program beforehand, I mean,
mm,
I wouldn't probably, I would probably be looking at joining another program.
mm,
And so that way I could actually, stick to something, have someone tell me through. But since someone kind of told me beforehand,
mhm,
I would know. So I wouldn't, credit myself 100% on losing the weight. It was a lot from my previous coach, just in my
sure,
mind, and then just kind of re-implementing it into
sure.
my diet there in 2019.
And you had the foundation built, I guess.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, and you could just kind of build from there. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, as far as kind of where I was at to start this, so I started in July of 2020, and it was it's been something that, yeah, like you said, you try certain things on your own. I think everybody can relate to that, where you're like kind of trying something and then you just don't follow it through for whatever reason. And the things I had tried before, like, it wasn't, well, I'll get into all the reasons why they didn't always work, but it was something like I would do for a while. I would do okay with, like, um during the week. I would be like, I would meal prep and it'd be fine. I was at work and I just would have my stuff and it'd be fine. It wouldn't be bad. And then on the weekends, it was like, well, I did good all week. So now it's time to just eat whatever you want. And it just wasn't ever, it was never something that could be sustainable, and a lot of things
Yeah,
went into it, I guess. But
I was definitely in that cycle too for a while where, because if you had a scale, you're stepping on it, you would notice, okay, I ate really good all week. I lost, 4 pounds or something like that. It's like, that was a really great week. And so, it's Saturday and let's get a pizza, and then,
mm-hmm.
that 4 pounds just, boop, then it's back.
Yeah.
And then you do it again in the week. You lose that 4 pounds again. That was great. Let's go get some McDonald's to celebrate, and so you can get stuck in that, where it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, well, I am losing weight, but you gain it back. And so, yeah, I've been there as well. And I know that feeling on, just pushing through week after week, yeah, I'm losing 4 pounds here and there, and, but
Mm-hmm.
just ruining it in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that at one point I think I had lost 15 pounds over a period of 6 months. And that was it. And I just got frustrated and was like, I should be losing more than this when I was first doing it. And obviously, yeah, I know more now, but at the time it was just sort of like, it was a little bit frustrating. Whereas, like, now in 7 months, I've lost so much, and a lot of things I think had to change for me. But I guess before we put the cart before the horse here, I guess I don't know if there was like an inciting incident to me deciding to do this. It's just something that I've known I've always wanted to do. And it's been more emotional than I expected, I guess, than I was anticipating to lose all this weight. And, um, you know, we'll talk about this later too, but I realized that I'm an emotional eater. Um, but I think a lot of it was the psychology of just always being a big guy and always feeling like I'm a big guy. Since I was a kid, was even just always described as like, oh, it's a big kid, or oh, you're a growing boy, Well, you need more than that, Luke. Oh, you can have more than that. Yeah, you can finish this. Oh, did you get enough, Luke? Come on, you can get some more. Like, we don't want to take any of this home. You eat this, Luke. Or please eat this leftovers because we don't want to be eating it all week. I could go on for 2 hours about all the things that were always just said to me over the years. And I'm not blaming anybody else, but it's just those were literally from a child, things that were being instilled in me, and you form an identity based on that, and I just it just sort of felt like that's all I was ever going to be, and that's all I was. And I don't know, it was something where I don't even think I expected when I set out to get to where I'm at now. I never thought this was possible where I'm at right now, for sure. But it was just something where I told you about it, but there was one moment that kind of made me think about it. And I was at a family event, and I was going through to get food or whatever. And my cousin was in front of me, and she's getting food or whatever, and then I'm going and I'm getting some food. And we had probably the same amount of food on our plates, and she is really skinny, always has been, whatever. And my grandpa's, she's going through, and he's like, oh, here you go, gives her some. And then I take some, and he's like, oh, you need more than that, Luke. And I just kind of stopped and was like, I said to him, like, I was like, why don't you ever say that to Brittany? Why are you just saying that to me? You haven't said that to anyone else here, and just kind of laughed it off. But that was the first time in my head, I'm like, yeah, why do I have to be that person? I don't want to be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do think that maybe weight gain and just in general in America may just be tied to, and I don't know, I'm no scientist, but just on our upbringings, because we are told, and I do have more about family, and we'll touch on it later here as well during the podcast, but just to hit on it real quick here in the beginning, it is always been, to go get that second plate and everything. And should it be? Maybe not, because we do have a lot of overweight people in America, so I do think it's kind of just tied to people always hounding food on you, constantly. And so that's just kind of how we grew up, to always eat a little bit more. And it probably, just is in our brains all the time. And weight loss or weight gain and everything is just, I think, really tied to the brain first, before anything else. So
yeah,
I definitely.
Absolutely. And I actually did an interview with Renee Jones. She's an author, and she wrote a book, What's Really Eating You. It's a really good book, and it's all about emotional eating. And that's kind of how she cracked the herself for being able to lose this weight and realize how emotional it is. And in that interview with her, talked about family, and she said that she's like, that's how they're showing love. They show love by being like, oh, oh, you can have more than that, we want to provide this for you. But yeah, I think about I guess to bring this, I think about when I have my own kids and you are about to have your first child, it's like showing love in a different way, and not being withholding of food, but just treating it differently. And I do think that, you know, we don't have to get into all this, but throughout time, you know, being overweight was sort of a symbol in ancient times of being rich and wealthy, was because you could afford to eat that way, you know. Um, and so I think that it's just, I think there's a lot of, I love food. I've always loved food. I still do. You know, I love to cook and I love trying new food, and but there's a different relationship with it, and I think that it can be a little bit unhealthy, especially when you start to think about how even everything like we do socially is based around food. It's everything we do. Like, are we going somewhere? Where are we going to eat? Are we going to eat before? Are we going to eat during? You know, like, oh, we're having people over. Well, now I got to make something, or I got to order pizza, you know, and it's just, it's been an interesting journey to sort of, you know, view food in a different way, but whatever, we could, we don't have to get into all that, but, um, it just, what I want to get across in this is not just my journey, but what I wanted to get at was like, you can do it. Loyal listeners, anyone who's listening to this, you can do it. And we can talk about the plan that I did. Just, it doesn't matter what, I truly believe it doesn't matter what plan you do. It's more about you, the person doing it, and
Mhm.
just sticking to it and not, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. In the end, there's when you look for diets, there's 100 of them, or
Mhm.
even more than that when you go out there. And people have had success in probably all of them. That's why they're a thing. And so basically, what it boils down to in the end is calorie intake versus calorie outtake. You're going to
Mhm.
lose weight as long as you are putting out more than what you're taking in. And so, yeah, finding the diet that fits you, go for it. Even if you've heard one person that's liked one versus another, it might work for you. Losing the weight, which I also, agree with Luke, anyone can do it. It's just finding what makes your brain tick. I think
Mhm.
like what just based on Luke and I kind of lightly touching on it and saving it for our discussions here. It sounds like we both had different, reasons on where our base started. Or what would work for us, or our
Mhm.
issues in between. And so, we all have kind of different issues. It's just finding that right one that works for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
why don't we talk about your plan, where you kind of got your footing there, Luke?
Okay. So in my head, I always knew that. Well, I guess what I always wanted was like you're saying, just simple math. Like, give me a formula and I can figure it out. Give me a plan and I'll follow it. You know, I needed structure, because left to my own devices, I couldn't do it. I tried to do it, you know, and I couldn't. And it was the the reason was me, you know, one, because I didn't know enough to do it, and also two is like, you can't, you know, you can't give the keys to the prison to the prisoner, you know, like, you can't just, it's like, whatever. I just needed structure to do it. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And, you know, and I'm really proud of what I've done and what I'm gonna continue to do with it. Um, and we can get into goals later, but the plan I chose worked for me instantly because it had a lot of structure. It was a clear plan that I could follow. It wasn't just like, because there's some diets, it's like, just like you said, some are just like that, just get this many calories, figure it out, you know. And I just needed like a specific, like, boom boom boom. And I had heard, what I did was, shout out, it's called Profile by Sanford. And you know, I'd heard of people doing it before. I had an old supervisor who had went through it for like a month and then quit, which is usually what everyone does, you know, with most all diets, especially this month of the year. January is the most popular one to do it. But I had heard of it, so I just kind of looked into it, and it I I like the structure of it, so I just called about it. They did like an interview, and instantly when I made the call and spoke to that first person, I I just made a concerted effort where I was like, it was like, I'm doing it. No bullshit. I'm putting it all out there. I'm not hiding behind falsities. I was like, I'm going all in, which is kind of like it wasn't like, people always ask you like, well, what made you want to do it? You know, what was the big thing? And I'm like, I don't really think I had a big thing. It was something that I wanted to do, and the opportunity just kind of happened. But once I decided to do it, I was all in, and knew that I'm just going to be completely honest with them, and just and give my all to it instantly, you know. And so I talked to him. I went in, and literally that day I took off work because I called him. I was just going to talk to this person just to think about it. And when I talked to him, they were like, "Can you come in today?" And I was like, "Yes, I'll take off work." So I took off work so that I could go in, because I was like, I'm doing it to the fullest extent, you know. And so I took off work. I went and talked to him. And the other nice part about this program is that you get matched with a coach that you meet with every week, which is super nice because it holds you accountable. You have to face up to stuff. You got to go in and, you know, and then they keep you honest. And I love that. And I was like, yes, I also really want that. So, yeah, I got on a plan. I went all in, and kind of hit the ground running. My first week, I lost 12 pounds in my first week. And then my second week, I lost 6 pounds. Third week, I only lost 2 pounds. And that was when I started to not follow it as closely. And that's when it was like, okay, I'm going to hunker down, and I'm going to start going to the gym. And then on from there, you know, it kept going. But
Yeah, that I did think about what my original diet was called. It was called Ideal Protein. You know, very similar to yours. But yeah, it was that moment of you know, you going in and stepping on that scale, you know, to weigh in. That definitely holds you accountable. Because then it's just like, all right, this is, you know, it. If I cheated in my diet, it's going to show right here in front of you know, your coach or whatever. You know, that I do think that's important to do it, you know, with, you know, someone that, you know, to make you want to hold yourself accountable for, you know. It's a big step. That way you're faced with them and not just yourself.
right. Yeah, definitely. And I think that when I started, I was kind of bouncing around to different coaches. Like, they were sort of like, what time can you come in? Well, this coach is available. So it was just like meeting with different people, and there were some that were really good. They were all good, but it was just, there were some that clicked better than others, and they kind of gave you different things. And that was also important too. But it also became apparent to me that that this is gonna sound weird, but whatever. Like, I'm special. I really feel like I'm a special person, you know, and I think I've always felt that, but maybe I forgot it for a while, you know. And just meeting with those different coaches and going through it, they were all like, "Wow, like, you're really doing it, and you're really putting in the work," and they could see, and I was. And I wasn't doing it just so they could tell me good job, obviously, but it was kind of nice to get that like validation for myself of like meeting with different people and them all being like, whoa, holy cow, all right. Like, oh, this is different, you know. um and yeah, and I always treated those sessions and still do. I just got back from one right before I came here. um as I treated them like therapy sessions. Honestly, I was just super vulnerable, and just went through everything. And I knew I was going to do that from the start. So holding yourself accountable, getting on that scale and talking to them, being completely vulnerable. It's like, well, I'm not going to cheat on my diet, because then I have to own up to that when I go in there, because I'm owning up to myself, you know? And so more than letting them down, it was really letting myself down. And I didn't want any excuses, you know? And I didn't have any, but, I kind of wanted to talk about goals with you a little bit, if we
Sure.
could.
Hmm.
So where I'm at right now, losing 125 pounds, um, I did not think that was possible, especially when I started. So my high point when I started was I was 342 pounds when I started. As of today, I weighed in this morning. I'm at 217 pounds, which is insane. Like,
Yeah, that's incredible. Hmm.
it's just something that I didn't think was possible. When I first started Profile, I thought, because here's a little background on me, loyal listeners, is that I'm I've always, like I said in the beginning, I've always been a big guy, and so I've only known that life. There wasn't really a point where ever felt like I was in. There was a point where I felt like I was in good shape, but I've never not felt like a big guy, you know. And so like when I was so when starting out, I thought, well, I want to get to the weight that I was at where I felt good about my weight, which was like 270 pounds. So my first thought was like, if I could get down to 270, that would be cool. And then I thought, like, you know what? I would love to be 250. Now, I was 270 when I was a junior in high school. I probably was 250 when I was like a freshman in high school, maybe, you know? And so it was sort of like, I was like, you know what? Let's push it. Let's push for 250. So that was my initial goal, which would have been 92 pounds. And I kind of thought like 250 is like crazy, you know. If I get close to that, I'll be happy, you know. And but then you just start going, and I start working really hard at it, and I'm getting closer, and then I was like, I'm gonna hit 250, and I'm not gonna be happy with 250 where I'm at.
Hmm.
And so we ended up increasing the goal to 220, which I have surpassed at this point. And I'm gonna keep going because I feel good. But it was just when I passed. So to take you through, when I passed 250, my initial goal, um, it felt monumental in a couple different ways. It did not ever feel like I was done, which I can get into that in a little bit too. But it was like that was a big moment for me because when I passed, when I hit 250, I was like, this is something that I didn't really think I could do when I started this. And I've done it, and I have a long way to go. And it was all of a sudden like I'm in uncharted territory, because it's for sure as an adult, but it was like I've never been this weight before, you know? And so it really felt like I could do anything, you know. I'm going to keep going, you know. And so that was when it really like clicked, because really up until that point I was struggling with, I still felt like I was over 300 pounds for a lot of this, you know. You've just been, I was that for a long time, for a really long time, for years and years and years, you know. So it was maybe a little bit of body dysmorphia, but it was just a little bit of like, it took a while to really feel like I was in my body, you know. And I think hitting that initial goal, that 250, it really was like, whoa, I'm like in uncharted territory here. Um, and I'm going to keep going.
Hmm.
And I would say that along the way, I never really thought of, I had the long-term goal in mind, but it was not something I focused on. Like I said, if you told me when I started this, like, Luke, you have 7 months to lose 125 pounds, I would be like, well, find somebody else. Because I mean, I don't think it's possible, you know. And just I just took it literally week by week, meeting with that coach, and like I can remember almost every week I had, but it was we broke it down week by week. First week, 12 pounds, huge week. Second week, 6, 2, 6, 7, 4, 7, 6, 7. I mean, that's how it went. And that's how I still kind of think of it. And that's what adds up. But it's just, and all of a sudden you keep putting the work in, you keep focusing on the week. And then before you know it, you're like, holy shit, I've lost a lot of weight,
Yeah, that was huge for me, as well, because again, when I first started mine, it was like, this is my end goal, this is what I hope to be, and it was just so far into the future, or as it seemed, it's just like it was discouraging, to get that way, and so when I kind of switched to just take every week as a victory. I think that's also a huge thing. Stop thinking about that deep into the future, because you can worry about that another day. But let's I kind of did it well per week as well. I weighed in every week and hope for change and everything, and took the little victories. But I also kind of worked on like per month as well. It's just like, it was just a lot easier for me to see that way. It's just like, okay, my first month, when I just went all out to, or let's see, well, actually it was 2 months. I was able to lose basically 20 pounds per month, and I thought, if I could lose 50 pounds before an upcoming wedding, shout out to Nate Dog, it was his wedding. Yeah, it was, that was my first just goal. It was something really short term, because it was only 2 months away, and it's just like, if I could step on the scale and see 299, that was my first victory. And it was like the week before his wedding or something, I hit that 299, and man, I was just ecstatic that it happened, and but yeah, short-term future, I think, is what really helped for me. And then I'd worry about that final term later on. Kind of sounds like we cross paths there as well during our journeys. Is that it's so much easier to keep yourself motivated looking at each week or each month, and hitting some victories there. And then all of a sudden it's just like, wow, I'm close to the finish line.
Yeah, and I think that it's those little victories are so important. And what I've heard is the key to happiness are small, achievable micro goals, which totally rings true. And the thing is that those micro goals are big. Those things do matter. It isn't, what I found is that, so going through this, so the reason this episode is a big deal to me, loyal listeners, because I didn't want to go public with this when I started. I didn't want to be like I didn't want to say, hey everybody, just so you know, I'm embarking on this new journey and everybody, support me or whatever. I didn't want to do that. I was doing it for me, and so you were the first person I called about it, to just talk a little bit, because obviously you had lost it, and I think I kept it to about 5 or 6 people that I talked to, really supportive people. And you know what? Let's shout them out. I won't say their whole names, but obviously my mom, my sister Haley, Chanel, you, Nate, our friend Nate Dog, and big shout out to Aaron as well. And I'll get into that a little bit too. But just those were the people that got it, and it was like those micro goals were big, and they meant a lot, because first of all, those are the people that really I thought would get it and mattered, and their support helped a lot, but it's also like, those things are important. I pulled this up here because I just saw this the other day, but it says, don't focus on going 0 to 100. Focus on going 0 to 10, then 10 to 20, then 20 to 30, and so on until you get to 100. Build sustainable habits through gradual progression. And I just read that today. And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Oh yeah.
You know, and just realizing that each of those 10 increments, 0 to 10, is a big deal. And that is a win. And you should feel good about it. You know, don't postpone your happiness until you've hit 100, because you're not going to be happy if you do. You're not going to be satisfied with it, and you won't appreciate the work you put in. And if I would have told everybody about it, you know, made it public, and then, you know, made it whatever, if somebody asked whatever, if I made an announcement, say, hey, I made it to 0 to 10, nobody would have gave a shit. You know, nobody would have cared. They would have been like, all right, well, call me when you actually do, you know, when you hit 100, you know. And
Yeah.
no, fuck that, you know. But the point is that it's not about other people. Those micro goals matter, and they're important. And the reason they're important is that they're yours, and they should matter to you, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's kind of the way I went around it too, you know, nice and quiet, because I wanted people to see it, instead of me
Yeah.
telling people to see it, you know. So that is kind of the same thing, you know. It's just like, well, if I lose it, they will see it, and then they can bring it up to me and something like that. And it's true, you know, you need your foundation before you can build your skyscraper. You know, you need to set the base. And so yeah, take each of those 5-pound increments as a victory, because you need to lay the platform down before you build up. So it is very important. You know, you brought up something that made me think. Do you remember how much weight you actually lost before you actually saw it in yourself? Because for me, it took me about 75 pounds. You know, and other people noticed it way earlier, stuff like that. But it's like I could not see it in myself until I hit like 75 pounds, and that was my first moment where I'm like, oh, I'm losing weight. I'm curious about yourself.
It's a good question. Yeah. It's definitely two answers for when other people notice and when you noticed it. Because like, I think it took. It's really hard to say.
Yeah.
I think that when other people started noticing it, it was about 50 to 60 pounds.
Yep. Same
Is
here.
is about when other people started to notice, and they were like, "Are you losing weight? Have you lost some weight?" And you're like, "Yeah, yeah, I've been
A lot at this
yeah,
point. Yeah.
a lot. I've been doing a lot of work, you know." But when I started noticing myself, is interesting because I think that I didn't really allow myself to notice it in myself for a while. Um, in my first 3 months, so I bring this up a lot, but Marshall Yanda, he was played football for the Ravens for 13 years. He was a offensive lineman, a guard, which is what I played when I was in football. He retired, and a lot of linemen, when they retire, they drop a lot of weight pretty quick because they had to stay big for so long, and it's obviously hard on their bodies, and they whatever. So when he retired, he lost 60 pounds in 3 months, and he looked great. And it was like at the beginning of 2020. I think he like retired in January. By March, he was 60 pounds down. It looked great. Basically ate a lot of tuna and was on his exercise bike. But anyway, it was like, wow, that's crazy. And then when I started going through this after my 3 months, I lost 75 pounds. So I lost more weight than he did in 3 months. Now, I was probably in worse shape than he was to start, but still, that felt like a pretty big accomplishment.
Oh yeah.
But when I started noticing myself, it was like, I think it was probably about that time. It was probably about 75 pounds. And it was kind of like I had such blinders on. I was just so like focused on this week, you know, just this
Yep.
week getting through it. And I'm generally pretty hard on myself, you know. And I didn't ever break or anything, but it was probably about that time. But I think I was afraid to notice it, to be totally
Yeah.
honest
Yeah.
with you.
Definitely.
You know, you're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
afraid that one day you're going to be like, I don't know, it's going to, the ball of yarn's going to unravel if you notice that you've lost
That
some
was for
weight.
sure. Yeah, something with me too. It's like I didn't want to settle. It's like, oh, I noticed it. Quit. that was for sure as
Yeah.
well. And so I definitely wasn't, I wasn't taking any comparison photos or anything. I took my, first photo just to have it. And I wasn't taking it week by
Yep.
week after to
Me either.
compare. I was just tunneling through, kind of like you as well, until one day, yeah, like I, got out of the shower or something, and then I was drying off and looking. I'm like, whoa, I actually do look different. And it was about the 75-pound mark where it's weird. You'd think that you would notice it earlier or something. Maybe it's because I was going with blinders on too or something. But it
Mhm.
was amazing that, after about 75 pounds, it's like, oh, there it is. I can
Yeah.
actually see it. I just thought it was really, weird to see it for the first time. Had other people had seen it and brought it up. It's just like, oh no, I actually can see it now. It took a lot, it took a lot of
Mhm.
pounds, but seeing it for myself for the first time was kind of cool. But yeah, definitely didn't want it to go to your head or something, and take it,
Mhm.
say, okay, that's a milestone too, and then just keep pushing through as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever anybody said that they noticed he lost weight, it was like, oh, long way to go. That's always
Yes,
the answer.
exactly. I
You
know, and I love
never
how
let
you
it.
said that too when I would tell you or say something, because it was just like the tape recorder loop through me too. It's just like yep, I, thanks. I'm not done yet. I still gotta keep going. It's just like yeah, it's a fantastic mindset. It's just like
Yeah.
I'm not quite there yet, but thank you. Of
Yeah.
course. Um, uh, I don't know if you want to talk about maybe the base on
Mhm.
possibly where you think a lot of weight gain is from. I know we've kind of
Okay.
touched about it.
Yeah.
Mine, I've kind of told you, but for the loyal listeners, is that I kind of just developed, especially in college and everything like that, just more snacks, always wanting to eat. And that definitely came with just that appreciation or a love, I guess, for food, to where I think, obviously, uh, kind of just speaking it on my own, but, in the end and looking back, it actually felt like there's definite food addiction in there because,
Mhm.
it's like your whole life can revolve around food. And I mean, you think about food at all times. You eat a meal, and then an hour later, you're rummaging around for more food, even though you don't have to. That's kind of the situation that I was in, which just threw me out of control. You know, I did start as a skinny guy in school, and then ballooned, or if that's an appropriate word, or grew after that. Uh, in myself. So that's where, Luke and I do kind of differ a little bit. I don't know if you have some light to shed on where you think, it was at with yourself.
Yeah. I mean, just to touch on you too, I was there for a lot of that.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, we've obviously been friends for a long time, so that was like the time you and I got closest. Was like, your senior year of high school, and then going into when you were in college,
Yeah, it definitely was. Uh-huh.
and I definitely noticed it. Everybody did, you noticed it,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
but it, and I think for that was partially too just like living a lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
And
Hmm.
you're in college and you don't have a bedtime and you don't have parents cooking you supper so you can have Taco Bell whenever
Oh,
you want.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Fully on my own,
mhm.
living completely on my own without a
Yeah.
care in the world anywhere else.
Yeah. And I think that happens to a lot of people, but I think it was also partially for you. You could, we have to talk about this if you don't want to, but um, you because of the prescriptions you were on, and partially because you were in high school, a high school student, your metabolism was a lot higher in high school. So it seemed like you could get away with snacking and eating a
Yes.
lot more when you were younger.
Yeah, my baseline, I do think I picked up bad habits back in high school, but I was on medication that ended up uh, uh, increasing my heart rate and inevitably increasing my metabolism and everything too, where, yeah, I burned through a lot of things. And I actually did get pretty borderline skinny,
Mm-hmm.
as you've noticed in some of my old photos and things like that. And that's about, in my senior year, and about the time that we realized that we did need to cut the medication back, because my body was having a negative reaction to it, with my heart rate was irregular, and yeah, my metabolism was well boosted. And so I guess I probably picked up my bad habits there, and then without the help, I guess, of medication, that is kind of where then anything then at that point just stuck around. And so going from I guess, a lifestyle where that hadn't happened to continuing the same lifestyle, definitely set me up for a lot of failure there too, and why things definitely started packing on a lot quicker than I think a lot of normal, or a lot of it would happen with other people as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because for me, it's weird, like where I'm at now, because looking at me now and then looking at pictures of me when I was like a kid, like when I was like 4 or 5, into being like before you're sort of like preteen or whatever, I look more like I did then now, um, than I did then. Yeah, I have ever since that
Yeah.
age, which is just kind of weird. But I think that for me, it was because even I've talked to people too, and it's like, I guess I had a lot of excuses that I could make, right? I had a lot that I would use, and I would use them a lot. I would say I hold weight well. I'm just a big guy, I'm built big. I have big bones. My it's in my genes, and it's just I've always been like this. A lot of these things, and maybe some of them are true, but I use them as excuses. And I don't really think I was the type of person, like people have said to me too. People are always surprised by my weight. I would say, like when I told them how much I weighed, they were surprised. They were like, "Well, you don't seem like you're that big." And it's not like I don't think I'm not a snacker like you. So I was always self conscious about that, where I never wanted to snack in public because I felt like everybody was looking at me, and I didn't want people to see me like Cheeto fingers in a bag and they're like,
Yeah,
look at
sure.
that fucking fatty. That's just
Yeah, yeah.
what I felt like, and I never wanted that. So I've never really had the urge to snack that much. So I was never much of a snacker myself. Um, and like a lot of, I don't think I ate crazy big meals either all the time, but the thing was, I realized really when talking with Renee, that interview that I mentioned earlier, that author, was I was a big emotional eater for sure. And um men tend to call it stress eating, but it wouldn't be, and I wouldn't even realize it. I would just have these bouts where I would get really anxious, um or really sad or depressed, and you just sort of, it was an addiction for me. It was not to compare it to drug addiction, but that it was what I used to satiate that feeling. And you would feel down, and I would find myself ordering a large pizza and going and getting it and eating the whole thing. I remember, like, yeah, I mean, it's just, and it would give you a boost, and you would sedate yourself with it, really. I mean, you would eat it and you'd feel like shit because you ate all this. Your stomach would hurt and you'd feel bad about yourself, but then you would feel sleepy because you ate a bunch of food, and you'd go to sleep, and that's really what did it. It was
Mm.
unchecked. It wasn't dealing with shit. It was really the root of what was happening. It was just reactionary.
Yeah, and that's where it really does boil down to, kind of, hard to, I'd say, pinpoint it, especially due to, because it feels like an addiction now that we've gone through it. And but yeah, not to, you know you know throw pity on us or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that, because there's addictions that are a lot, can ruin lives a little bit more and everything like
Mhm.
that. But I think the hard part about food is that, with an alcoholic, um, you know, you get rid of the booze in the house, or you don't go to the bars, that kind of stuff. But how do you stop a food addiction?
You
Because
need food
you
every
always
day.
need it. Yeah, there's always food. And you're always going to need to buy food. You're always going to be around food, and that's probably why it's not really, talked about or something, because you just need food. And people that don't know, you know, I had a hard time understanding how someone could get addicted to something until I realized that I was living a life where I was addicted to something. You look at other places, and and so in the end, you know, you're always going to be around food. So it does really come down to you having to, you know, stop and control yourself, and say, there's no way to get out, or to uh, uh, avoid food. You're going to need it at all
Mhm.
times. You just really have to
To
get
reestablish a healthy
yeah,
relationship with it.
yeah, definitely get your mind in check, because food's always going to be there, and you just
Mhm.
need to kind of live with it, at that
Yeah.
point. So, but it's definitely hard. It was hard for me, and probably will, possibly always be hard and everything like that. But
Mhm.
it is, something. It's how do you deal with someone that always wants to eat, and or emotionally eats,
Mhm.
and you know tell them, or work with that. It
Yeah.
is interesting.
And it's hard to like you said, I think it's hard to diagnose and hard to
Hmm.
recognize. I didn't realize it in myself, and who knows you better than you, but it is tough to see it. And because it is like you sort of those excuses that I brought up, you have to get rid of those. You can't
Hmm.
have excuses, and you have to know you're getting on that scale every week,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
you're holding yourself accountable. And so there is nobody else. It's nobody else's fault. It's you. It's at the end of the day, you control, what's going on. And um, so that's part you got to be able to control that, but being able to control it is to recognize that it's a thing.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where it kind of, when you talk about it that way, that's where it does kind of sound like you fall into addiction territory, because it's overcoming your own issues.
Hmm.
It's like, I know I ate, I had my pizza over lunch, and now it's 2 o'clock. Why do I want to go get the rest of that pizza? You have to stop and say, no, leave it alone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we can maybe move into a little bit that we kind of talked about at the beginning of the podcast, is family and family
Hmm.
gatherings, and just gatherings in general. It always revolves around food too.
Yeah.
And you know uh, and why family gatherings do have to be, family pushing you to that other plate. I shared a story with you, after I lost all my weight, um,
Hmm.
and my wife's family knowing, that the struggles that I kind of went through and everything, where we had a gathering. I ate my fill. I'm good. You know, in my head, I still think about like that second plate and have to say, no, don't touch it. And then after I've done that, uh, then they say, "Oh, there's still a steak there, Tyler. You better eat that other steak." And it's just like, "No, no, thank you. I don't want it." And they pushed like another 2 times for me to eat that other steak, and that was kind of the first time after my diet that I thought, you know, to myself, of course, I'm not going to bring it up at the table, but it's like, it's hard. I of course I want that other steak, but you've seen where I've come from. It's like, that's not a lifestyle I don't want to go back to. And And I have to tell myself not to eat that second steak in the first place. It's like family gatherings are a little tough because it's like, everyone wants you to eat your fill. And as your author had mentioned, it's probably out of love and everything, but you can't, do that to some people like us, I feel, because, it's honestly a little hard on me, and it does get a little bit emotional
Mm-hmm.
when someone tells me to get that second plate. I need that second plate. It's like, please, no.
Yeah.
I live a past where I would always get that second plate, maybe even a third, and I just,
Mm-hmm.
please don't, put me back there.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, I don't pretend to know what it's like to be an alcoholic, but it sounds like, you know, oh, Tyler, you've done so well. You haven't had a drink in a year. You just have one glass of wine. You're
Exactly.
like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What do you? No, I can't. I can't. It's like saying to a werewolf, just have one chicken, and then you'll be good. It just doesn't work like that. And it, I think that what well, I'll save this point for later. But um, family is tough, and that was probably the most challenging part of this whole thing. Partly one because my family, there were family gatherings that I had to go through in the meat of this thing when they didn't know I was doing this, so they weren't really prepped for that. And so like I kind of I give them a little bit of a pass for some of this stuff, but yeah, I mean, you have to, what I deal with, and I still deal with it now, and I've been trying to overcome it. But like with family, even to this day, it feels like they just want you to be who they think you are and who they've always thought you were when you were a kid. And that's it, right? And it's probably because they don't really, it's not their fault, but it's they don't really know me, um, and that's just what makes sense to them. And there's just feels like there's a pressure to just be who they think you are, right? And for me, what they see Luke, they see me as big guy, quiet at these family gatherings. They're all extremely loud, by the way, guys. So it's pretty easy. It's
Yeah.
pretty like I don't really fit it. So big guy, quiet, Vikings fan, likes dogs. That's all they know about me, and that's
Yep.
all
Yep.
that's all they want to know. And so those are the categories they can talk to me about, or what was what they is what it feels like they think. And big guy was always one of them. I was always the biggest one, tallest and everything. So part of the pressure into fitting into the person that they think you are is they sort of push those things on you, and they push you to have the second steak, and they put the pressure on you. And they I always say I'll say I would usually just do it because it's easier.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
It's just easier to just play the part, to just be the person they think they want you to be, or that they perceive you as. And it's just easier, to just go with it. But it takes a lot to be able to be like, no, I don't want that second steak, and I'm not the person. You don't get to say who I am. I get to say who I am. And that may sound overly dramatic, but I'll tell this story on the pod. I know I talked to you about it, but the hardest part, the point that nearly broke me during this, and there were some tough parts, was a family gathering. It was over the summer, and it was my whatever. I don't have to get into all of what it was, but basically it was my little cousin's high school graduation. So they were having the ceremony, the party at a brewery, And so people were going to go and whatever. So, and keep in mind, my family doesn't know that I'm trying to lose weight really at this point. So I was nervous about going, very nervous. But I had my plan, which was I have my meal prepped at home for my supper. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to have that. Right. And I had like my afternoon snack thing that I ate right before I went to this. So I had this planned out. Right. I'm just going to go, I'm going to hang out and it'll be fine, you know. So, and this was fairly early on. It was only a couple weeks in, I think. And I went and you go in and, you know, you smell my grandpa's brisket that he brought, you know, that he's been smoking all day, and you smell the cheesy potatoes that you love, and you know, and then people are handing out tokens to go get craft beer, which was one of my favorite things, right? And it was tough, but it's just like you put the blinders on and you say like, I'm I'm bigger than that. I'm stronger than that. I can withhold this. I have my meal at home prepped. I'm gonna go home and eat that, right? So I go through and I'm just drinking water. I looked like an addict because I was just sitting there twitching and just drinking bottles and bottles of water, you know. Um, and everybody's eating around me, and I'm just sitting there, you know. Well, then my uncle comes up to me and he says, you know, all right, Luke, I got to get your opinion on this. Which dessert was better? And so I had to say, I don't know, I didn't have either one. And he said, "What?" He's like, "What do you mean you didn't have either one?" Kind of, it sounded like he was mad at me. And I was like, "I didn't have either one." And he's like, "Well, did you just get some more of the brisket?" I was like, "No, I didn't have any of the brisket either." And he just was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You didn't want any?" I was like, "I wanted some, but I just can't have that right now." And and he just was like staring at me. And so to try and stand up for myself a little bit, I was like, well, you know, at that point, I was like, well, I've lost 26 pounds. He's like, yeah, well, I'm sure it works if you just don't eat. I'll just push away from the table. Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah. And and so as he's berating me, I just stood up and walked out and just left. Um and I can feel myself getting emotional again here talking about it, but I was uh I was on my way home and I went to call you to talk about it. And my mom had texted me. She was sitting near me and she knew that I was doing this, right? And she said she was like, "I'm sorry that family doesn't understand sometimes." And it just broke me. And I just started crying. I think I was leaving you a voicemail when it happened
Yep.
too.
Yeah,
We
I
should
got the
sell
tears in
that.
the voicemail.
we should
Yep.
we should sell that recording. I'm sure it'd be worth something, I think. But that was the first time I had cried in 5 years, in over 5 years, literally. And it hurt a lot. And I guess I didn't mention earlier that my other uncle had made some remark at my expense too at that same gathering, like, "Oh well, we were all eating roast," and he's like, "Oh, you know, Luke had 7 plates of pot roast that day." And I just looked at him and didn't laugh. But I'm just saying, like, it was a build up to that, but it was tough. And it was
Yeah.
you know, like I said, I'm not holding animosity toward them, and it's not like they knew that I was going on this program going into it. So it was kind of shocking to him. And I don't blame anybody for it, but family's tough. It's
Yeah,
really hard to deal with.
that's where it does get tough. You know, and because I mean, yeah, you definitely had a really tough experience, tougher than any family gathering that I went to when it was still kind of in secret on my end too, because I didn't let the other side of the family know or anything that I was dieting or anything. But we had to go to gatherings as well, and I I ended up lying with
Mhm.
ours, and I kind of told you my cheat. I basically went and got like a really small first plate and just kind of tried to eat it, and then I
Mhm.
went back for my second plate, and then to get my like full portion, because when inevitably they said, uh, oh, you're gonna get another one. That way, I could be like, well, this is already my second plate, and I'm stuffed. It's like
Mm.
just because, yeah. If you don't have an excuse or anything like that, and, and again, it's not their fault, but they'll, uh, hound you to keep eating, and when it's really important when you first start, that you don't break. And when they hound you, I think that's probably where a lot of people break, and it's really unfortunate when they don't understand, and maybe they never will, uh, and they broke you during that point, or something, which is why I was always glad, that never broke you or anything like that, because it's, especially your situation, it's really tough, or to, uh, stand your ground, and, then if someone, pressures you on why didn't you eat anything, to not just, okay, oh, okay, fine, I'll go get a plate and eat. And then that's the first downfall,
Mhm.
um, yeah, it's definitely tough, and I assume on your end, once you finally got rolling, it definitely got easier. Family got a little bit more understanding, but yeah, it is that first few,
Mhm.
that's really tough, and you know all diets are restrictive on food and everything, and so it's probably really painful to hear someone tell you while you're taking a diet seriously, and not a reckless diet or anything like that too,
Mhm.
that when you don't eat, yeah, no wonder you're losing weight. I mean, that would just feel like a massive dagger,
Yeah.
and so always was happy that you pushed through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and it did. It hurt a lot, and
Oh yeah.
but a lot of good came from it too. My I knew that my mom understood what I was going through. She already knew at the time, and she had tried to stop him from going on, but nobody was going to stop him at that point.
Yeah.
And um, my I almost tear up thinking about this too, but my stepdad was there and he was like, "Oh, Luke, Luke's doing his own thing." And if you know my stepdad, he's not like he's very quiet. And so for him to even try and get up it and protect me meant a lot. It still means a lot to me that,
Mm.
even though they didn't, that they attempted to, but also the sort of button on that was in the moment, I felt very lonely. I felt alone. I it was not a good feeling.
Mm.
Um, and when he said that, like, oh, it's easy if you just, oh yeah, if you just don't eat, it really felt like, yeah, I definitely started to spiral, and um, it was really hard. But the I think kind of the button on it was that um, that was really hard to deal with, but I did it, and
Yeah.
I went. I didn't break, and on my way home, I thought about it. I thought about just stopping at my favorite bar and getting duck fat fries and all this stuff, but I was like, no, if I do that, then then not he wins. But it's sort of like, if I do that, I'm going to feel worse about this whole thing. No,
Yeah, yeah.
he,
And it comes back down to yourself again.
it
You know,
does.
you'd let that break you, but you would have known that you'd only left yourself down. So
Correct. So
yeah.
it's like, no, I can control how I deal with this situation, and looking myself in the mirror, getting on that scale and holding yourself accountable, going in to see my coach that next week was like, I'm not going to tell my coach that I broke because, I had one confrontation with a family member. That's going to break me. No, it's more important to me than that, and kind of the button on it too is like, after that, my mom was like, she was like, can we just tell, the family so that they know, so like something like this doesn't happen again, and I'm like, okay, that's probably fair, and so whatever, they were made aware of it, and they all said, um including this both uncles were like, wow, great job, oh, that's so cool, oh, that's awesome. And I was like, I mean, fine, but this, it did not feel, I didn't, no offense if any of them are listening to this, but it was like, I don't care. I had that chip on my shoulder, and I was like, you know what? I don't care. Fine. You can be happy for me or you can not. It doesn't affect how I feel about this and how I'm going through it. Like, great. I'm glad that you're like, oh, hey, oh, that's so cool, Luke. Literally didn't change how I felt about it. And maybe it would have if I didn't have that confrontation. But after that confrontation happened, where I felt so alone, then it sort of renewed my convictions in this fact that it's like, yeah, well, I'm not doing this for anybody else. I don't care what he thinks. I don't, I'm doing it for me. And, I don't care. So it really was like a good moment where then going forward, when people later on, when they start to notice and start to say things, you still have the blinders on of like, well, still got a long way to go. But it really wasn't, it actually helped to be able to get through it, and then to
It's
know,
something
like,
to push through and makes you stronger. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's, and yeah, maybe some people need, a little wake up call or something like that too, or, just to know that you can do it. And after that, you just knew that you could do it and you pushed all the way through.
yeah, yeah. I'm still going. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like a completely different person at this point, in the best way,
For sure.
and I feel like a person that I always wanted to be, but didn't think I could be, physically and otherwise. But it also, I feel really proud about what I've done, but also like what I've overcome in doing it, and the year I did it in. I did it all in 2020, which I think we can all agree is one of the worst years, we've all ever experienced. And whatever, I don't want to get on my own thing, but what I wanted to say is, I admit that, like, I feel like I'm a lucky guy though. At the end of the day, like, I put in a lot. I put in the work. I worked at it, and I worked my ass off, and I'm still working my ass off, and I'm proud about that. But it definitely helped that, like, that I was a single guy, that I was basically living alone, so I didn't have to deal with other people's food. There were a lot of things I could control. I never had my gym shut down, so I could always consistently go work out. I didn't have to deal with trying to switch up my routine or do my own workouts at home or whatever. I could keep going to my gym. You know, lots of stuff. I consider myself lucky for a lot of stuff, but I'll say that I also don't have any excuses. And I think that people, because I feel like people listening to this, Because what I've heard too is like, they're like, wow, that's amazing, Luke. I could never do that. I'm like, yeah, you could, and they're like, well, I got this, or like, yeah, but I do this, or, well, I don't know, I just kind of this. And I mean, we just choose what excuses to make,
Yeah. Yeah, there was a time that I almost thought I settled in completely myself too. It's like, well, yep, it's not going to be me. And I guess this is just me. It's the person I made myself out to be. And it's easy to just think it's over. And it's not like it's easy, to go through a life change or anything like that, but it is possible. You just have to do it. Like one of my key words or phrases for myself to finally go through is that it's temporary. It's just like it was temporary to get myself to where I was in the scale of being large. And so it's just like, just put the pizza down here, for this year. It's like you've lived for 26 years, it was at that time, or 25 years. And so it's just like, just give yourself one hell of a, healthy year to get yourself back on track. And, whenever I had a craving for something, anything bad, it's just like, it can wait. And then once I'll be in that position, it's not like you can just go crazy, once I hit my goal weight or anything like that. But it's just like you can enjoy it again. But let's just do it in moderation. Let's not ruin ourselves here again. And so that was my big thing. It's just like, this is only temporary. You'll enjoy that stuff again later, but we need to get to that spot that we can enjoy that stuff later again in life. And that's also what worked, for me to put stuff down and get going, and when I was in a spot where I just thought, this is me and I'm going to be big here, and that's just who I am now. So
yeah. And I think that I have what the fun part is, like, the mental games you have to play to get through it. And the things you have to say to yourself, or that you have to like figure out what works for you. It is fun to get through. But I think I have a little bit, I agree with what you're saying. But I never thought of it that way. But I think that's a good way to look at it going into it, especially for somebody who thinks they can't do it. Like you said, you will get to a point where you can enjoy those things again in moderation, safely, but you will. And so, like, right, it was a temporary thing that got you where you're at, and it's just a temporary thing that can get you out of it. I hear you there, but like my mindset going into it, and still right now, is that this is a lifelong thing for me. And it wasn't like, I think because where, like I mentioned before, I'm not at a place I was before. I've never been at this place where I'm at, so it is just like, we talk about building a foundation. I feel like I've now rebuilt a whole new foundation that I have to keep working on, and so like from day one, it was like, what, it was similar but different to what you're saying, where it was like, I had my time, I had my time eating all the shit I wanted to eat, and just living abandoned and not thinking about it, and just going crazy. Like, I had that time, and look where it got me, and I don't want to live like that anymore, and so there'll be a time when I don't have to carefully plot every single thing, that I eat, but I'll never not be mindful again, about what I do. And that's that's a choice I made, and what I want to stick with, because I want to, we only get one shot at this life, you know, and it's, I just want to live the life that I want to live. And I want that for all you loyal listeners. And you can make it happen. You know, you can just do it. Um, but, like, speaking of feeling like a new person. So, I mean, one thing I wanted to bring up, is that I had one thing that Tyler and I have always talked about together since the beginning, like, you know, elementary school on the back of the bus. One thing we've always just talked about were girls and our girl problems since day one when we had code names on the back of the bus. It's
Oh,
like
man, yeah.
that's been a consistent. And for years we just had Tyler and I had a lot of issues, and
Yeah.
we had to just talk about it together, and just and part of it, you know, when you up and got married, and when you were with your wife before, they became a little bit more one-sided from me just complaining to you about what I was going through. But it was kind of like I was at a point where I was in not a healthy relationship a little over a year ago, and it wasn't good, and it wasn't good from the start, and it was never going to be good, and I should have known that, and I think I did, but I didn't want to, whatever. Not going to get into all that. But then I started to notice a pattern. And I think that kind of built up to me wanting to do what I did, where I was sort of in this, I was all of a sudden in these same patterns, talking to these same kind of girls in very similar situations. And it was just sort of like where you step outside yourself and you're like, wait, what are we doing here, Luke? You know, what's going on? And so when I decided to go through this, one of the things I said was, no girls. You know, I said, I don't want to, it's not even an option. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to be talking to girls because I just don't want any distractions. And I'm not saying like there were people lined up out the door waiting to date me, but it was just that thing where I just said, I don't want any distractions. I'm singularly focused on this. And I want to get into a point, like we said, social interactions are typically based all around food. I don't want to get to a point where you're talking to somebody and then you're like, oh, well, let's go hang out. What are you going to do? You're going to go out to eat, you know, like what else? And I didn't want to be in a position where it was like, well, I can't have that, or well, I can do this. And then have them not understand really what I'm going through, you know? So I said, no girls. And I didn't totally follow that all the way through. Where the reason I wanted to share this was because when I said I was like, I can start talking to girls or thinking about girls when I've hit my goal, then I can kind of think about like maybe whatever. At that point, I'll put in the work, and then then I can think about it. And I was starting to think, you know, who's the type of person I would want to be with, and started to kind of like get get almost nervous about that. Like, can I trust myself? You know, am I gonna settle for this or that, or like, you know, you just kind of start overthinking it. And I realized that a constant that I needed was someone who like understood what I was going through and what this whole journey meant to me, and you know, that it was a big deal in my life. And I was kind of like, that's going to be tough, I think. You know, I don't know if I'm going to be whatever. And then it just so happens that I'm now in a relationship with the one person on earth who understands this as well as I do, which is my coach, my health coach, Aaron. Shout out. And it's it feels great, and it feels like everything really lined up. And I won't get into a lot of detail, but the reason I'm bringing it up was just because I that was such a staple in my life, and our relationship, Tyler, your and mine, was like all these issues that, with girls, and we just, it was like, well, I'm a nice guy. I don't know why this isn't working out. I try hard. I have these interests, and you just think like, what? Never thinking like, is there a common denominator here, Luke? With you and all these things. And so then when you step outside yourself to really work on yourself, and then be there find someone that understands that, and it, was there pretty much every step of the way, just feels right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I was happy to hear that too and everything. And yeah, as you maybe mentioned, there was a while where it could have gotten a little bumpy down the road or something. And if Luke had to vent with a girl problem, it's like, okay, I better
block off
get ready,
45 minutes
and everything. But then once you had mentioned her and everything, and then finally getting to meet her here and everything too, it's just like, even for me, it did feel really good to see like that, and happy as ever too.
You're like, you're all grown up, Luke.
Yeah.
But I guess
wanted to be like,
we got through it. All this led to this.
Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, you and I, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should have just dated, you and I, but
I would have understood you from the start.
Yeah, that's true. You would have. Shoot. Yeah.
But no, it's a great thing.
The reason I bring it up, I guess, is because I think it symbolizes the future for me in a way, and not of the past. Whereas, like, going through this, I found the person that I wanted to be, and I'm trying to be that. I'm trying to get to that person, right? And I've made a huge lifestyle change, and I've plan on doing that going forward. And it just, that this represents to me like the work I've put in, but also like the work I'm going to continue to do, and continue to hold myself accountable, but also, be on a journey with somebody else where we're both trying to, be the best version of ourselves. Is just feels cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's pretty good.
So okay, so you lost 130 pounds, right? When you went through it. So when did you hit that goal?
Let's see. I believe I started, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I started in May. And then I actually kind of forget, which is funny, but
was it
must
like
have been
October, November?
Yeah, I was thinking December. It was maybe around in December
Okay.
That I hit my final here or something like that. So yeah, May? Maybe it was earlier than that too when I started. Either way,
I think if I remember right, Nate's wedding was in June. Okay. To bring that back, so maybe it was April.
Yep. It was 2 months before that wedding.
Okay.
So April then. Yep.
Okay.
Again, at least we're linked a little bit there, so we can pinpoint the start of the journey too. So.
Okay. But it was about a year ago.
Yeah, basically.
That you hit your goal. So I'm curious, because I have like I said at the beginning, I'm under my goal, and I have a different whatever. So, but as far as like me looking forward, I'm just curious how your life has been in this year following you
Yeah.
hitting your goal.
Yeah, I would love to talk about this
Okay.
because I haven't shared it really yet or anything like that. Uh, but so I was in, let's just say a really good spot in February or something,
We
as
redid
everyone
your
was right before
hardwood
COVID hit.
floors. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
um, and uh, uh, basically, I kind of let myself slip a little bit, and I've kind of let you know that as
Mhm.
well, to the point where, and you know, without throwing excuses either. But with COVID, we were trying to do more things at home too. We were baking things that we've never baked before,
Mm,
including desserts and
sure.
stuff that isn't good. And I did let some old habits slip in. And again, this is something that I will probably uh, you know continue if I don't address them. I will probably still fight it, more than likely
Mhm.
here always in the future as well.
Mhm.
And that's I kind of even have a message, for people that may be in the same situation. And so basically after February or so there, um, it was very slow. But I gained a little bit of weight back and everything like that, to the point where I actually gained back about 35 pounds.
Mhm.
It was a big rebound, I'd say. And rebounds can be pretty discouraging. Um, and I was still in a good mindset enough that way I had like a breaking point, early here. If I ever hit it, I'd tell myself to go back on the diet and everything like that.
Mhm.
And which was basically like 30 pounds over. If I gained 30 pounds back, so I hit the 35 and then kind of started back over. And so if someone does go through their rebound, which a lot of people do, and I
Mhm.
think it's fine as long as you're aware of it and everything, to just know, okay, be aware. I still always scaled in, and it's just like, okay, this has happened. Now let's fix it again, and to where I haven't lost everything back yet, um, but I have knocked back off 15 pounds again.
Mhm.
And so I'm 15 pounds over my goal weight, and I still hope to lose down. I'm not going as large as you and I did, and that's fine for people that are losing weight too. You don't have to hit it, well. Our method is we just went all in and go for it. This time around, I've slowly chiseled kind of away and things like that. Uh, but yes, I did go through a bit of a bounce right after, like February there. And, it's just to be able to grab back on and don't uh, let yourself go, which some people have. And because once that happens, it's easy to get depressed. And then if you're more on the emotional eater side, it's easy to just let it go. But it's good to like constantly monitor. I knew, like I shouldn't have had some stuff, or just knew that maybe we shouldn't experiment baking with something yet,
Yeah.
or something like that. But just to pause, and then kind of restart. And so I'm happy to be continuing in that downward trial, especially after the Christmas season too, because again,
Mhm.
as you know, with Christmas, the whole smorgasbord comes back out as well again.
Mhm.
Uh, and But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm sitting right now, actually. I'd say in my mind, I'm in a really good place here again,
Mhm.
especially starting to get closer to where I ended back in 2019 there. But slip ups can and probably will for some people happen. Not everyone, but some people. And if you do go through your own weight loss journey, or just are losing weight or trying to or gaining a little weight, just know that you can stop it, still, and it's never too late to get back into it, or anything like that. So I'm happy to say that I'm let's see, so that would make me, if I'm 50 pounds, I think I was at like 246 pounds or something like that is what I'm at now. Down from where I hit like 260 something pounds a little bit before. So
Sure.
So yeah, that's kind of where I'm sitting, a little bit of a bounce, which can be really hard for, I think, some people to talk about, because you don't want to let people down, and neither did I, and which is why I grabbed back hold of the reins, and I'm going to go back, I'm chiseling away here again. But yeah, it kind of comes down back to everything, which is probably why when I was at that one family gathering, it hit hard again. It's because, it just might be something that I struggle with, sometimes more, other times than not. Like right now, I said my mind's in a pretty good space, but sometimes it kind of slips away a little bit. But as long as I have good friends and my wife and myself in the end, to keep myself accountable, we're gonna hope to keep being in a good spot.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think about that a lot now, obviously, with me surpassing my goal, and now just having like being in this place where it's kind of like this would be the time where it would be easy to be like, well, I've lost more than I thought I could lose, and I put in lots of work, months of work, and dealing with all this shit, and now like I've earned it, and luckily my mind isn't really like that, so I don't really feel like that. But it's more of you do think about it's a marathon and not a sprint, and I know it's going to be something that I'll have to deal with forever. And like you said, I think that sometimes it's our resistance to a thing that gives it its power. So I mean, if you're afraid of it, if you're afraid of food and you just are trying to avoid that's what's gonna bite you in the end, is because you're gonna build it up to be this big scary thing.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people have asked me, how to do it, or something like that too. And a lot of things that I sometimes bounce or roll back to is, to never be afraid to step on that scale. Even if that you had a bad day, it's like you still got to get on that scale and see where you're at. It's when you start turning the cheek to the scale, it's like, I know I had a bad day, I'm not even going to check. That's where you can, at least for me, everyone's different, that's where you can start to slip. It's saying, all right, you did this is where we're at, tomorrow's a new day. That's always big for me, is that tomorrow we'll make it right. So
yeah
yeah,
I think that I'm planning on um continuing to weigh in weekly, maybe for the rest of my life, but just to keep track of where you're at and monitor the situation, and that's definitely where I found that my anxiety shows itself, is with avoidance. Where like anytime money's been tight for me and I know that money's tight, when my anxiety is really high, I don't want to check my checking account. I don't want to know what my balance is. It's like I don't want to know. I just don't want to know. I know it's bad, but I don't want to know how bad it is, But you need to. You
Yes, you
have
do.
to know. the only way to deal with it is to know, and you have to deal with it. Same thing like in high school. I know you understand this. When I was not
I think
doing
I know
well
where
in a
this is going.
class, I didn't want to know what my grade was.
Oh
I,
yeah.
di- I didn't want to check. I didn't
Oh,
want
been
to
there.
see what assignments I didn't turn in. I
Yeah.
know it's bad. I don't want to see exactly how bad I'm doing in the class, but you need to. The only
Yeah.
way you're going to be able to get credit for those missing assignments is if they are, and that you turn them in, or whatever it is. But you have to know where you're at to be able to move forward. So yeah,
Hmm.
I totally agree. That's a great
Yeah.
sign if you find
Definitely
yourself
important.
not
Yeah.
getting on the
Yeah.
scale.
And some people, especially if you don't or haven't struggled with food or your weight or things like that, they may, jump on a scale once a month and just to see, and then they may not even have to. Me, on the other hand, it is important for me. It's something that I have to check every week, and
Mm.
yes, I'll probably, hop on a scale every week, for, like my life too, just because I do need to know where I'm at. That's just kind of who I am. And it's, it's not something to be ashamed of. It's just, who I am, and it's what I need to do, and I know that with myself, and I will do that. It's when I stop doing that is when I'd get nervous for me. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think, some people wish that, you know in the end you could say, that, yep, I'm good and I'm going to be good forever. But when you face kind of, at least especially something where, I gained that 100 and 30 pounds basically in like 2 years or 3 years, right in college there. um it's just, it's kind of what my old lifestyle used to be, and it's just something that I'm gonna just need to keep in check with myself, and that's fine, just as long as I'm, keeping that check with
Mhm.
myself. So
If you had one parting piece of advice to give the loyal listeners, what would it be? Would it be that?
yeah, yeah, especially if you're looking to start your journey, if you're looking at to begin your own weight loss that you've been struggling to do, yeah, my advice is, what worked for me at least, is to know that it's temporary, and that you do need to get over or on top of your mind before your body, and to, yes, check the scale. The scale is obviously in weight loss very important, and to have it laid out in front of you is what I needed. And I think that's very important to have those things when you start.
Yeah.
And then definitely the scale going forward,
Yeah.
to keep yourself in check.
Yeah. I agree. I think a lot of what we talked about, I think everything we said was good advice. No, but when we talked about the doing in increments and little bits, that I think that's really the key. But along with that, I was reading this. I just read this book called Good to Great, and it's a great book about whatever. It's about corporations, and they did this. A group of researchers did this big study. This book was published in 2000, so it's a little bit old now, 21 years old, which is crazy to say. But anyway, researched like companies to figure out like corporations to see what were quote unquote great corporations. They had this criteria. They found 11 on the Fortune 500. And so with these 11 companies, corporations that they considered to be great, they did comparison companies in the same industry as them that had similar opportunities, that were on the same path, but then the great companies went from good to great and they went way up, and these ones stayed the same. So they wanted to see what made them great. And it's a fantastic book. Now, I have a business degree, so I'm a business guy, and I loved it. But one of the things they talk about is they call it a flywheel, or like a flywheel, I guess, concept, but they just reference it as a flywheel, which are like implementing these goals and these habits and you know, the new culture, whatever, but things they do are little turns of this flywheel. And every time you do one of these things, you just push the flywheel one notch, you know, and then you do another push, the flywheel goes another notch, right? But pretty soon, the more you push it, the more that flywheel is going to turn. And then all of a sudden, one push is going to make it do two notches. And then two pushes is going to make it do four notches. And pretty soon, it starts building momentum. And then eventually, a push is going to equal 100 turns instead of one. You know what I mean? That's the concept of it. And then it just starts kind of building, self-fulfilling, whatever. And they refer to that as like these processes or whatever that they were implementing and stuff. And the thing that was interesting about it to me was that the little, for the YouTube people, the little graph I did with my fingers here, at the point they called the breakthrough point, where the great corporation went skyrocketed and the other corporations stayed kind of stagnant where they were at, and how that corporation skyrocketed to be way above market value. They call that the breakthrough point, right where it broke away from the market. So the thing is that people always point to that point, the breakthrough point, right? And they always say, well, what happened right at this point that made you start going straight up and everybody else keep being stagnant, right? And they were like, well, it wasn't just one thing. It's not like they just woke up and they were way above market value all of a sudden. It was, they were pushing that flywheel for, a lot of times it was 10 years before that breakthrough even happened.
Yeah, sure.
10, sometimes 20 years. And they were like, well, it was just a series of pushes on this flywheel. The other way you can think about it is an egg. And if you think about an egg from our point of view, when an egg hatches and the chick breaks through the shell, we think, holy cow, there was a chick in there. That's incredible, right? But from the chick's perspective, it was a series that was just the last push in a series of just getting bigger and being in this case and slowly, you know, getting bigger and maturating. And then all of a sudden you just like, it's just one more push and then boom. And then if that chick broke through and you stuck a microphone in its face and said, how did you do it? You know, how did you get to where you're at? That's amazing how you broke through. How did you do it? Chick would say, I don't know. I just kept, it was just another step in what I'm doing. So what we talked about with not going, don't think of it as 0 to 100, just focus on that 0 to 10 and then 10 to 20. And people aren't going to notice the work you put in until you've hit that breakthrough point. And until that breakthrough point, who gives a shit? It should matter to you doing it. And those things do matter, but just know that the outside world isn't going to know that you've put in the work until you've put in the work, and it's not going to matter to them. And honestly, that shouldn't be why you're doing it. You know? So like when you and I were talking about the first time people started to notice us losing weight was maybe that breakthrough point, you know, or whatever. But you and I were like, I've lost 60 pounds. I've lost 75 pounds, you know? Like I've been dieting for months, working out for months. Just it wasn't just like all of a sudden I broke through the shell, you know?
Yeah, that's definitely true, especially with that eggshell comparison. Yeah, it took it took months before anyone noticed. And yeah, it's not for them. But that's the stage that people notice.
Yeah.
After 50, 60 pounds, we, I guess, started to crack the shell,
Mhm.
and people started to notice. But yeah, it's not right there. It was many growing stages, or goals for us,
Mhm.
to get to our cracking point where people noticed, and we
Yeah.
weren't done. That's
Oh.
just the chick, to
Yep.
keep it going with the egg. And so that's basically halfway point, right there. And
Yeah.
then we still both lost then basically double that,
Mhm.
and from that spot, and to grow into a full-size chick.
Yeah, we're roosters now. Look
We're roosters now. Yep.
at.
And so yeah, even if that is your breakthrough point, and that's where people notice, that's another good step. That's the spot that people notice. But it took this much for your growing stage. You hatched, and then you have X amount of time left as well. I really like that analogy, for this, at least kind of what we went through. It's kind of
Yeah.
easy, I think, for people to see that. Yeah, so it's a lot of work beforehand. I should say it's a big stage beforehand and a big stage
Mhm.
afterwards. But
Yeah.
even if the point that people see is right in the middle,
Yeah.
that's fine. And they saw it and pushed through.
Yeah.
That's great.
But you still got plenty to go before you're waking people up in the morning, calling it
Yeah,
the
exactly.
sunrise.
Yep.
But I
Yep.
would say to people, you can do it. You can. And it has more to do with you than it does about the diet you pick or the program you do or whatever. And I believe that with every aspect of your life, it just has more to do with you. So if you decide you want to do it and you're committed to it, you'll do it. And I'll be there to support you. If you need some support, you can reach out to me, um, and I'll help you there. So on that note, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the show and
Yeah.
sharing
Thank
this
you.
time with me. Um, if they want more health advice, where where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me, Burdettedog, at Twitter.
Yeah,
Yep, and you can find me and yeah, Luke. We'll both
yeah,
be probably helpful if anyone does have any other questions.
yeah.
It is great to see other people reach the top. Some people have asked me for advice, and things, and you're the first one that has started his journey after
Hmm.
me, and after kind of how you've gone through, and or after what you've gone through. I'm sure that if you see someone else too um, go all the way, it's a great. I mean, you just feel like how hard they worked in it, and it is a great feeling to watch other people do it
Hmm.
too. So
Yeah.
so we will be willing to help if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so you can find me on Twitter at Luke Larson 89. You can find this podcast at L Squared Podcast on Twitter, on Instagram. We're on Facebook at L2 Podcast. Check us out. Let us know the journey that you want to go on, and Tyler and I will be there um, to support you. And we know that January is the month for a lot of people starting new journeys and trying to lose weight. And um, it's a lot of work, but it's extremely fulfilling, and you can do it. So thanks, Tyler, again. And until next time.